Hello guys, today I want to talk about a update that is coming on the 24th of November. This will be a gear adjustment. So we have a gear adjustment notice which is giving us information about what's happening, and I'm going to go over it and give you my thoughts on what I think about these changes, how it'll impact us, and if anything what we should be doing leading up to it or not doing. So first thing to note, this is only going to affect servers number 1, server with the ID of 20,001, 30,001, 19,001, 19,002, 29,001, and 49,001. I'll probably put the numbers somewhere here so you can see. If you're not on those servers, which you can check by going to your profile and seeing in the bracketed number next to your ID, so I'm 49,001, then you will not have this update on this date, you will probably get it later. So with that, let's get into the notice and see what's happening. Alright, so with that, let's get started. This kind of breaks down the overall what's changed. So there's going to be some changes to the naming of gear sets, there's going to be adjustments of bonuses, they're reducing the drop rate of primary/secondary healing bonuses, and balance the drop rate of gear bearing other attributes. They've also added a set for healers, which can be found in Gear Raid 3. Helms are now going to be bangles. I guess that fits the accessories more, so you can really call it weapons and armor on the left and accessories on the right. They've optimized the loot of some stages in Gear Raid, and there will now be potential ancient bangles and weapon drops after the update. And here are the main bulk of the actual changes. So the Wrath set is being changed from being called Wrath to Elite Fighter, and the crit damage bonus has been increased from 25 to 30%. The Agility set is being changed to being called the Elite Marksman set. The Arcane set is being called the Elite Mage set, and the damage has been changed from 15% to 20%. Twilight set has been called the Elite Defender set, 15 to 20% HP. So as you can see, the standard flat percentage left side slots, so these are for the weapons and the armor pieces, they have been renamed and seem to be given 5% bonus across the board. I'll get into how I feel about this later. They've added a new set as well. This is an accessory slot set, so the right side, this will be from Gear Raid 3, I believe they said, and it will give you 15% healing and 10% max HP, so this will become the default set for healers. I think this was very needed because healers didn't really have much of a decent set to have. You would kind of go for the Rage Regen sets. There's a good one for that, I can't remember the name at the moment. And the Glacier set I saw a lot of people using as well, because a lot of healers scaled on attack, and this was kind of the de facto way of getting more attack as a healer. So they've actually scaled this one down, which I don't know that they needed to do, because now that they've got a actual concentrated set for healers, healers will just use that instead of the Glacier set. And I didn't really see DPS using the Glacier set unless it was like a Salavic, so I feel like this will just hurt tanks perhaps, but that's okay. The defenders didn't really do a lot of damage anyway. And then anyway, onto the Night Terror set. Before, it was 100 attack speed for 3 seconds when you landed a crit, and the effect could only trigger one time every 10 seconds, and now it's just a flat 20% bonus damage for 3 seconds upon a critical hit, and it does not seem to have a cooldown, so one would assume that most people using this set would just permanently have 20% damage bonus, because you'll be critting almost all the time. I guess other than your first attack, if you've built your unit properly, you should have near 100%. If you're farming for these specific gear sets, then you'll probably fall into that category. The Curse set previously gave you 1% damage bonus for 2 seconds upon dealing damage, and this effect stacked up to 15 times. So this was predominantly a mage sort of item, because you could stack up many instances of hits. I have this on my Zealous right now, and now it will become 5% bonus damage for each enemy within the attack range, stacking up to 5 times. So assuming there's 5 enemies in front of you in your attack range, you'll gain 25% damage bonus. This is up from what would have been 15% before. This is clearly just an improvement. There's very few scenarios where the other one would have been better. Even with one enemy, that gives you 5%, so on a single enemy. So previously you would have had to have done 2.5 attacks a second to match that. So I think this is almost better in almost all cases. The Shield Breaker used to do 20% against shielded enemies, and now instead, when your health is above 70%, your crit damage is increased by 40%. They have also renamed it to the Fracture set. I think this is arguably now the strongest DPS set, purely because in a lot of content you're going to have healers, and content where you don't need healers, it's because you're not taking damage. So most of the time your units are going to fall into this threshold, and 40% is a lot higher than 25%, which will be the new norm for other sets. Because if your crit rate is 100% or nearabouts 95%, then crit damage and attack are pretty much equal value. You just want to make sure that you're not too far on one scale versus the other. And it's a bit harder to get crit damage than it is to get attack, because you can get attack on your weapon slots. So I think the Shield Breaker set will become dominant. Most of the time you'll be above 70% health. It will be quite a strong set for that. Wisdom, after using the ultimate 20% damage for 10 seconds, now it's being changed to 25% damage. I still think this is trash. I'm sure certain characters like this because they use their ultimate a lot. I don't have those characters. Your ultimate is not recovering that fast most of the time. Even my Shark King, doesn't have it every 10 seconds, and his ult is usually back quite quick. So why would you take 25% damage after using your ultimate when you can get 40% crit damage? Anyway, we'll move on. The Insight set, before, every single target attack deals additional true damage equal to 8 times the caster's level. So the caster was 60 times 8. That was 480 true damage. True damage means that ignoring defense and resistance. Instead, it will now be 10 times. It will be 600, and you'll also gain 12% crit rate. Now, I think this is quite big because 12% crit rate is nice, and it was quite difficult. It can be quite difficult to get 100% crit rate, so I think this will be quite valuable for certain builds and characters. Again, though, you would want to play a character that hits rapidly. My first thought on this would be to zero, of course. In terms of legendaries, I would want to see if Calypso, if all of her instances of damage from her ultimate piling up, the passive, if they all applied this damage, because then it's 4 shots every attack. But she doesn't attack very fast, so most likely it's still not worth it, but when you add in the crit chance, I think it makes it a much more valuable set. The Guardian set, before shield strength 15%, after receive damage minus 15%. This is quite strong, I think. Flat reducing damage taken by 15% is very good, and I would assume this would apply after your defenses and resistances, but it's still quite strong versus the shield strength, which is quite specific, and I've never built this set nor wanted to, even though I use Vortex. I'm sure certain legendaries who apply self-shielding a lot would benefit, but in most cases it's not very useful, especially for a set, like one of 3 sets to drop from a raid, and it's just like, no one wants this set. So this is a much more useful set for tanks, for example. The stick set, previously area damage 15%, now AoE damage 15%. I don't understand this. Maybe you guys can help me understand. Maybe there's a nuance I'm missing here. But we just saw sets giving you 40% crit damage. We saw sets that gave you, the curse set giving up to 25% damage. This seems to be a naming change from area to AoE. Maybe there is a difference between the two of them that I'm unaware of, because AoE stands for area of effect, so it's the same thing, except this offers 10% less damage than the curse, and it offers a whole 15% less damage than the crit damage set that you can get. So they both have requirements, sure, but late game you're going to hit both of those requirements almost all the time. So I think everyone who's farmed up the stick set is now going to be disappointed, because it now kind of sucks compared to the other sets. Again, maybe there's a nuance I'm missing, please let me know if there is, but from what I see it sucks. Anyway, loot adjustments 2, so this is to do with where they drop and where you get them. So stage 14 to 18 will not drop the following sets: Ravage, Devastator, Fury Tower, Remedy. So this one makes sense to me. This is like in the left side, your weapon and your armor piece, your chest piece. There is basically 2 tiers of the sets there. They aren't like the right side accessory slots where the gear is, the sets change. These are basically like, do you want 10% healing or 20% healing? It's just a straight upgrade basically. So all of these sets, there's kind of, for the most of them, there's a duplicate set that drops from 14 to 18, which is better. So this effectively removes the worst set from the loot pool, which is a very nice change. It was kind of just dead gear. You get a myth drop and it's a remedy set, and you're like, there's a much better set I would rather have. So this is, I don't care about the subs, it's going in the bin because it's a 10% loss in healing effect, right? So this is nice. It's basically removing the lower tier of weapon sets. Stage 14 to 18 of Gear Raid 3 may drop the following new set. So this is the healer's set, the one with 10% health and healing effect. This is a nice thing to add. Stage 14 to 18, instead of stage 10 to 18, we'll drop the curse set. And stage 10. So basically, they have nerfed the stick set down to being worse than the curse set intentionally. So as I was just ranting about the sticks being worse because it's fixed AoE damage, and they've pushed the curse set up. So now it makes sense that it's stronger. However, everyone who's spent ages farming really good sticks gear is now being demoted, and the curse set is better. It works for me because I actually had a better curse set. But yeah, sorry people who had really good stick sets. I think you probably now have to refarm a new set of curse. Both of them seem to drop in both raids, so you're going to get them either way. And Fracture and Doom have both flipped as well, because I guess Fracture is now better than the Doom set, which I didn't see any notice on. Doom gave you 15% bonus damage to single target. That was previously the dominant set for DPS. You'd see a lot of Salazars and Wraths using the Doom set, but now I would assume you would want them to have the Fracture set, though in Guild Boss, which is the current hardest content, you do take a lot of damage. So it depends how often your healer keeps your DPS above 70%, determines whether or not you would want to use the Fracture set so that you could get that 40% crit damage bonus. But for most other content, I imagine the Fracture set would be better than Doom. Which again means you're going to have to refarm your gear, unless you don't believe you'll be above 70% health enough for it to be relevant. And they've reduced the drop rate of gear with primary/secondary healing bonuses and balanced the drop rate of gear bearing bonuses for other attributes. This is good. This is something I have ranted about a little bit on the Discord, not excessively, but the problem is healing effect as a stat. I think, personally, I don't think it should exist. It doesn't make sense, because only healers care. Like, your defender doesn't care, your fighter doesn't care, your marksman doesn't care, your mage doesn't care. Some of them will care, but slightly. Like Salazar's like, oh, that's nice, I heal a tiny bit more when I proc my 1 in 5 crits passive, but it's just so negligible. So having a stat which is only for a single character, I think, is not ideal design. For example, you might say, oh, well, healing effect, or you might say healing percent. So for example, you might say health percent or defense percent isn't useful for fighters or rangers. You're going to take damage on every character at some point, so having more tankiness is useful. Healing effect does not increase the healing you receive. If it did, then fair enough, it does something then, but more often than not, healing effect, you see it and you're like, ah, that's funny, it rolled 20% and it does nothing. So it's not a good stat to have. I personally think they should just remove it, but I understand that would be difficult to do. But this is an improvement. This is a good change to have. This is the right direction. They have added, and another change, the last change is added all those gear raids that drop legendary and mythic gear have a chance of dropping ancient bangles and weapons. The ancient gear will be more powerful and rarer. This is probably one of the biggest changes. This basically means that your left slot and your previous helmet slot, currently your helmet slot becoming the bangle slot, will now have a chance to drop ancient myth gear. If you don't know this, people who've been playing this game for a while, not me, this was a while ago, they previously used to drop ancient myth gear, and that was stronger gear, then they got rid of it, and now they're reintroducing it. And what that means is if you want to have best in slot again, you're going to have to refarm and get more mythic gear. We'll start, I'll start discussing how I feel about these changes and what my recommendations are. As for this, I would recommend that you don't farm Gear Raid 1 until the event lands, because you're going to want the ancient myth drops, surely, especially the the weapon slots, which are limited in their resources. It's a lot easier to get like your best in slot gear drops. You definitely want them to be ancient gear and not just myth gear. So yeah, I would suggest holding off on farming until those drop. As for the rest of the changes, a lot of it seems to just be jigging numbers around. We had a 5% damage increase across most of the DPS sets, as well as the higher damage dealing sets now having some kind of requirement to get the damage out. The left hand sets have just been bumped up in damage. That's fine. That's probably to help with Guild Boss Nightmare 4, which people seem to be having a lot of trouble with. I'm not near that yet, so maybe one day I'll do a video on that. So I'm assuming they're trying to creep people's gear to push people to feel like they can achieve Nightmare 4 maybe. But for the right hand sets, a slight nerf to Glacier, fine, sure. The Night Terror set changing to 20% damage upon crits. Like I said, you're always going to have this up if you have this set on. The Curse having a requirement is a bit more interesting. It's a better requirement than the previous one, and it does a lot more damage, 25% damage. So it puts it a bit above the Night Terror set, which is easier to maintain than the Curse set. So I think that's okay. The Shield Breaker set I feel like is the best set. Most of the time you're going to be above 70% HP. I feel like this might not be as good as I initially thought, just because on the Guild Boss, I don't know how, I haven't seen other people's runs, but I'm assuming that most Nightmare 3 and Nightmare 4 runs, you are not above 70% HP for the majority of the run. So perhaps the other set is still better, but I'll have to see how that goes. The Wisdom sets change. I still don't really care about this set. I feel like the duration should be longer, or the damage increase should be higher. I don't know. I still don't rate this set. The Insight set now I rate. I think it could be quite interesting on certain characters, just because the 2 extra modifier from 8 to 10 I don't care about. It's that the 12% crit rate is what makes it more of a valid option in my opinion. The Guardian set is interesting, but defenders never have a problem dying anyway, and no one else wants this set, so I don't care for this set still. I think it's still a bit of a meh, but it's better than Shield Strength at least, so I'll give you that. The stick set stayed the same, and I think this is directly worse than the curse set now. You only need 3 enemies in your reach to get the same effect damage in the curse set. I think you're going to hit that requirement most of the time, and when it really matters, when you really want the maximum damage out, is when there's more than that. Your AoE units aren't really there to kill 1 to 2 enemies, they're there to kill 5+ enemies, right? That's what the AoE damage is for. So in my mind, the curse set beats out the stick set, which they have clearly rejigged around. I don't kind of like it. I've seen some criticism on the Discord from the players who've been playing the game for a long time, and their criticism is that the developers keep rejigging gear around just so people have to go and refarm it, and this kind of looks like that. Now, hey, your stick set is worse than the curse set, go farm curse set. At least they haven't wiped out your gear. It's just if you had been farming specifically for certain sets, then you're now kind of got to go back and do it again. I don't really see the benefits of it. Other than that, the rest of these changes seem fine. I really like that they're removing the worst sets from Gear Raid 1. I think that's a nice change. I like the tinkering to the healing bonus. The ancient gear, I'm interested in seeing how that works, because at the moment, older players who have ancient myth gear from the previous versions, I had a look at them when I was doing my gear guide video, and some of the players have crit rate and crit damage on their weapon gear, and the gear has been power creep since then, so their values are lower. However, they have crit rate on their weapons. The crit rate is quite hard to get in this game. You only have 3 slots that can get crit rate, and you're not using sets to get it. You need to get 100%, so you need to sacrifice one of your primary slots for 60% crit rate, and then you need 20% on each of the other 2 gear, which basically means that any gear which isn't crit rate needs crit rate as a sub, like 100%. Or you need to have a character which has built-in crit rate like Wrath to reduce the burden on you. So having an extra 10-20% crit rate on your weapon is huge. It's a really big deal. So I'm hoping they bring that back in so that older players aren't at this weird advantage. It doesn't matter that much because of the current state of the PvP, but it leaves you a bit of a funny taste knowing that, oh, those guys are just stronger because they have old accounts and they have this weird gear. Again, power creeping, but 10%, 20% crit rate is a big deal. I don't mind too much about that. My main criticism with gear is a very overall thing, and it's I really wish they would try to find more interesting sets. Flat damage stuff is, as you've seen in this video, always just going to be which one gives me the highest percent, that's the set I care about, right? So if you just give us, 15% attack versus 25% crit damage, if assuming my unit is built right, I will want the crit damage, I won't want the attack. So I don't think it's a very interesting design. I feel like it leaves out a lot of units. I'm not too keen on it, personally. I would prefer to see them change the sets to have other effects, such as killing an enemy gives you extra rage or something like that. Just give sets or stuff that is a bit more varied. I can understand there's limits compared to traditional gachas like Raid and Summoner's War, etc., because there's a very different in how the combat functions. If you gave people sets of stun on hit, it's a bit messy. I'm disappointed to see the attack speed set go from Night Terror. I feel like it was kind of an interesting thing. I don't think it was very strong because of the 7-second downtime, but I would like to see something that does some interesting mechanic with attack speed, because attack speed is an interesting stat to have. So overall, my final thoughts are, I think it's a good direction that we're getting rid of the worst sets in Gear Raid 1. That means less dud drops. We're reducing the drop rate of healing bonus, healing effect gear. That is much better. That's again less dud drops. They mentioned as well that they're rebalancing the drop rate for other stuff, so maybe they're going to try to help us weed out some of the flat stats. I know a lot of people are upset about that. So I think overall it's a decent change. I'm a bit concerned that we're still just bouncing around percentages, because ultimately the players are going to find whichever set is the most effective, and then everyone's going to use that one set. The defenders need something that does something other than just makes them tanky, because they are already too tanky. Defenders are going to want something that makes them more interesting or gives them a bit more utility. They don't need to reduce damage received. If your defender is dying, everyone else is dead. So I probably still wouldn't put the Guardian set on my defenders. My Captain Reeve, I will give him something else. I don't know what it is, but I'll give him something else. I guess to wrap it up, I would say I think it's a decent change. My advice again would be hold off on really going ham farming, especially Gear Raid 1. The rest of them, we've still got like a week left, so you can keep farming as normal. It's a week, right? But Gear Raid 1, you probably want to hold off because of the ancient myth weapons that are coming, and because of how easy it is to farm reasonable weapons in Gear Raid 1 because of the less substat importance. And yeah, other than that, we'll wait and see what happens. There might be some changes between now and then. Overall, fairly decent change, but I would like to see some more dynamic or interesting sets coming in future. So yeah, we'll leave it at that. Thank you for watching. Please let me know what you think below. If you have any thoughts, if you have any challenges to what I've said, or any alternative opinions, then yeah, please share. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.